Hey friends, Ash here with Gents, coming back at you guys with another fragrance rotation video. I try to get around to these as often as I can, but it's not every week because I have to break everything up with new reviews, with first impressions, with other list videos, stuff like that. So it's hard for me to get to these weekly rotations, but I'm finally back around to doing another one today. Feels like it's actually been a month or so since I've done one of these. Don't know if that's accurate, but that's what it feels like. So in this video, I've got 7 different fragrances to talk to you guys about today. Most of these are pretty well-known fragrances. They're not all like brand new or anything like that, but these are fragrances that have been talked about in the past and for good reason. Each one of these fragrances in their own way is an attention-grabbing fragrance. And by that I mean the type of fragrance that can potentially pull you unsolicited compliments, because that's what a lot of you guys out there are interested in, and that's what I based this around today. So we've got 7 different fragrances to talk about. Don't want this video to run too terribly long, so let's go ahead and just jump right into this. First fragrance I want to talk to you guys about today is this one, PARFUMS Vintage Brilliant Bergamot. This is PARFUMS Vintage's clone or their version of Bergamot 22 by Le Labo, which is a fragrance that I do own. I actually purchased that at full retail in Chicago, and that was back like 3 years ago at this point that I picked up B22. So yeah, Brilliant Bergamot is their version of Bergamot 22. One of the issues that I have with PARFUMS Vintage, and I've brought this up in the past, actually in the last couple of reviews that I've done of different PARFUMS Vintage fragrances, is their pricing. PARFUMS Vintage is expensive for clone fragrances. This one, for a 100 milliliter size bottle, is going to run you $163 the last time I checked. So $163 for the PARFUMS Vintage. Now, Bergamot 22 at full retail, also 100 milliliter size bottle, that's gonna run you $280. So between this one and the original, there's about a $120 difference. So at least this one is not right there about the same price as the fragrance that it's cloning. That was one of the big issues I had with Summer Bottled, which was the last PARFUMS Vintage that I reviewed. That one runs really close to the same price of the fragrance that it's cloning, which is for Parfums Humaniste. This one though at least saves you a little bit of money. Now, since this one is named Brilliant Bergamot, you should know that the main note in this fragrance, the one that's gonna draw you in and keep you there, is bergamot. And that obviously is what it's going to share with Bergamot 22, imagine that. There's also orange blossom and grapefruit in the opening of this fragrance, so it's gonna give you a big citrus opening. Again, mainly having bergamot as the focal point, but it's gonna be a very uplifting, refreshing, slightly tart, juicy citrus open that smells great. There's also a little bit of petitgrain in there that you're gonna pick up early on. It's gonna add more of a green tinge along with the bergamot. There's cedar in here, vetiver musk, and amber as it dries down. So those are gonna be some of the other notes that play in there. It gives it a nice woody base as the fragrance dries. That one, great for spring and summer. I got to wear that fragrance as it heated up here over the past week or so. There have been a few days where it's been short sleeve weather, and I busted out Brilliant Bergamot for one of those days. This one is a very high quality clone of Bergamot 22, so if you like Bergamot 22, you want to save a little bit of money, get a fragrance that's going to come across very similarly, that has a little bit of better performance. Brilliant Bergamot does last a little longer than Bergamot 22. It does project a little bit further for me. If you're interested in that, you want to save a little bit of money but get something similar to Bergamot 22, check that one out. It will pull compliments the same as Bergamot 22, and like I said, it's going to be better suited for spring here in the next 2 to 3 months as we head into April and May. Next up is a fragrance that did get a good amount of hype back a few years ago. It doesn't really get talked about that much anymore though, but it's still very solid. Carolina Herrera CH Men, and this is one of the more vintage bottles because it has this little red ribbon. If you buy this nowadays, it's not going to look the same as this bottle. You won't have this little ribbon. It'll actually have a golden CH on the front of the bottle instead. And just to touch on this very quickly, some people will tell you that this version with the little ribbon has increased performance, that it's so much better than the modern formulation of this fragrance, but there's not that big of a difference that it's worth actively seeking out and paying a big bumped up premium for a Red Ribbon bottle. If you like this fragrance, just go with whatever formulation you can get for the cheapest amount of money. There's not going to be a huge difference in smell or performance. This one has sugar, leather, vanilla, and actually a little bit of a grassy note to it, so a little bit of greenery almost in the opening. This one is ultimately going to be a sugary, sweet, appealing, almost suede-like leather type of fragrance. A great date night fragrance, a great nighttime fragrance. One that I think you could pull off in spring or fall or winter. Summer, as long as it's not horrifically hot outside, you can pull that off as well. That one is a big compliment getter. I know that some people actually prefer CH Privé to CH Men, and I'm not saying those two fragrances are super similar or the same or anything. It's just a lot of times they kind of get lumped in together since it's the same house, Carolina Herrera, and they both serve a lot of the same purposes or have a lot of the same uses in terms of when you would wear them. For me though, I think that between those two, if I could pick only one, it may be CH Men. It would be close, but it may be CH Men. As I said, this one got a lot of hype back a few years ago, and the reason for that was because of the compliment factor, and that is why I wore this one in the rotation. Next up, a fragrance that I've talked about a number of times on this channel. It's made top 10 lists in the past. I do have a backup bottle of this fragrance, which is actually the one I'm going to show you here today. That's why it doesn't look used at all. It's this one, Yves Saint Laurent L'Homme Ultime. This is mainly a ginger and rose fragrance. There's also cedar in here. There's cardamom, there's grapefruit, among other notes, but the main things that you're going to pick up from this are going to be that ginger, which is very uplifting, almost effervescent and bright in the opening, and then the rose. The rose here, very fresh, not at all one of those powdery roses, not a rose that comes across overly feminine or anything like that. So don't let the rose note scare you away. If you're the type of guy that doesn't like florals in your fragrances, or if you're the type of guy that thinks that rose is way too feminine, or like I said, powdery or sometimes jammy or too thick in fragrances, don't worry, because in Ultime, it smells great. Ultime is a fragrance that smells fantastic heading into spring. As the weather heats up, it just really pops off of my skin. As I said, the ginger in the opening there, really attention-grabbing, effervescent, fresh, brisk, just really smells awesome. And as it dries down, it's got that little bit of spice and a nice woody base that makes that extremely versatile. And that's also a huge compliment pulling fragrance, which you would expect since it is part of the L'Homme line, which for the longest time, both the La Nuit de L'Homme and the regular L'Homme lines from Yves Saint Laurent have been compliment beasts. Next up, let's talk about this one, Prada Luna Rossa Carbon. And if you want to break this down in the most simplistic way possible, Luna Rossa Carbon is essentially Prada's take on Dior Sauvage. So basically, Prada took a look at how well Dior Sauvage was selling, how much money Dior was making off that fragrance, and they were like, can we get in on that action a little bit? And they did with this. It's got ambroxan, lavender, metallic notes. It has coal, it has bergamot. This one does come across to me like a smoother take on Dior Sauvage. It's not quite as loud, not quite as abrasive, not quite in your face, but it does the same thing. It accomplishes the same job, which is versatility and compliment factor. That's what this fragrance has going on for it. So if you've seen a lot of discussions online, whether in Facebook groups or forums or things like that, Luna Rossa Carbon will always get compared to Dior Sauvage, and it'll be kind of split 50-50. Some people will prefer Dior Sauvage. They'll prefer just that big blast of ambroxan, that metallic vibe, and that just kind of, like I said, in-your-face nature of Dior Sauvage. Other people will prefer Luna Rossa Carbon, where it's a little bit more dialed back, a little bit smoother, like the edges have been rounded off a little bit. Like I said, does the same things, wear it in the same situations. It just depends on your personal preference on how you like that DNA to come across. Luna Rossa Carbon is just a killer fragrance in terms of grabbing attention, just like Dior Sauvage that came before it, which is why it's in this rotation. Let's go from one fragrance that definitely is inspired by Dior Sauvage to another fragrance that other people will say is inspired by Dior Sauvage. This one is Coach Platinum. Now, to me, Coach Platinum is not at all as similar to Dior Sauvage as Luna Rossa Carbon is. Luna Rossa Carbon is much more obviously inspired by Sauvage, but there is a little bit of that Sauvage DNA or that inspiration in here as well. This has cashmere, vanilla, leather, and pineapple as some of the notes in the fragrance. I have to bring this up every time I feel like that I mention pineapple, but the pineapple in here does not at all smell like Creed Aventus. This does have, like I said, a little bit of that Sauvage type feeling, which is that sparkling, almost aroma chemical, attention-grabbing facet of the fragrance. Now this one has cashmere rather than ambroxan as the official note, but if you spray that one on, Coach Platinum, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about in terms of how it just leaps off your skin and grabs attention, especially in the opening. So this one's gonna have a little bit of sweetness from the vanilla in here, along with that cashmere, that's gonna give you that aroma chemical vibe where it just pushes out off your skin, grabs attention, like I just said. It does have a little bit of leather as it dries down in there as well, and some fruity sweetness. It's a big compliment pulling fragrance, very versatile, better suited for spring and summer, potentially fall as well, and decent performance for that one off my skin. And that one, believe it or not, Coach Platinum is actually a fragrance that my wife and her friends and other people that have smelled that off me just think is awesome. So it's one that originally, when I smelled it, I was like, yeah, it's okay, but it's not great. But then the more I've worn it around different people, especially women, it's an attention-grabbing fragrance. So even if I think that it's just all right, other people think that it's awesome. Next up, this bad boy right here, Creed Aventus. I did not wear this for an entire year. That was actually one of my fragrance resolutions for last year, and I didn't actually do a fragrance resolutions video for this year. Maybe I could do that now, but I'm a little bit late. But anyway, I didn't wear this for a whole year, and I'm wearing it again. Pineapple, blackcurrant, birch, bergamot, musk, you know the drill. This one, depending on the batch, is either more fruity, heavier on the pineapple, or more smoky and heavier on the birch. On occasion, you'll find a batch that's really well balanced. It's got a bit of that fruit, a bit of that smoke, just right. I'm not gonna go too into detail with that because that's a rabbit hole that you'll never get out of if you start going down the Creed Aventus batch rabbit hole. But if you want just a very quick Cliff's Notes version, each batch of Aventus smells slightly different. Well, sometimes more than slightly, but each batch is kind of its own version of Aventus. And by batch code, I mean the batch on each bottle. This one that I hold in my hand is 15U01. So this bottle here is from 2015. And then U01 is the specific batch code from that year, 15U01. So you could go onto Google and type in Creed Aventus 15U01. It's gonna pull up all kinds of information from different people that have this batch, and they're gonna let you know, oh, this one's a little smokier, or that one's a little fruitier, or this one's a nice balance, or whatever. But Creed Aventus is just a fantastic fragrance, one of my favorite Creeds, one of my favorite fragrances, period. A lot of people will tell you that guys like Creed Aventus more than women do, and that's actually probably true. If I'm being completely honest, when guys smell this, they're like, oh my God, what is that? It's great. And I have gotten a lot of compliments from women while wearing Creed Aventus, but it seems that guys like it a little more than girls. Either way, fantastic fragrance, amazing year-round versatility, day or night, casual or formal, office or date. Creed Aventus can do it all. And of course, there are countless clones of Creed Aventus out there as well. Club de Nuit Intense Man by Armaf probably being the most well-known of that bunch. We're gonna wrap this one up with a clubbing favorite, a clubbing staple ever since it was released. This one right here, PACO Rabanne 1 million, just the original 1 million. Cinnamon, leather, amber, rose, and spices, some of the notes in this fragrance. 1 million has had countless flankers, 1 million Privé, 1 million Intense, 1 million Cologne, 1 million Lucky, on and on. Some of those are more well received than others, but this one is the one that started it all, at least for that line of fragrance. And when we talk about the modern day clubbing fragrance, the modern day clubbing banger, the really sweet, very loud fragrance that commands attention when you go into a room, one that can project out for many feet and grab the attention of all the people around you, 1 million always gets brought up in those conversations, along with fragrances like Versace Eros. It's a very sweet fragrance with the amber and the cinnamon playing the main role in the scent profile, along with a little bit of leather as it dries down. That one, just enormous compliment puller. It is, though, maybe a little bit better suited for the younger guys out there. Can't imagine too many guys that are middle-aged and older wearing a whole bunch of 1 million, because this one does come across very youthful. And that one, 1 million, wraps up this rotation of different fragrances that are attention grabbing and compliment pulling. Each one of these fragrances has gotten me good reactions when I've worn them out and about, whether to gatherings with friends or just out to places with the wife. Let me know in the comments below which of these fragrances is your favorite. And as always, thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and thanks for all of your support. I'll see you guys again tomorrow, like always, with another fragrance video. See you guys.